Story 1. Let me tell you about the most entitled woman I've ever encountered and how her obsession with aesthetics nearly cost me thousands of dollars. 2 years ago, I bought my first house after saving for nearly a decade. It was a modest 2-bedroom ranch in a quiet suburban neighborhood with a homeowners association. The previous owner had installed a 6-foot wooden privacy fence around the backyard, which was perfect since I have 2 rescue dogs who love to bark at everything that moves. The fence was in good condition, well maintained, and completely within all property lines and association guidelines. Life was peaceful until 6 months ago when the house next door sold. The new owners seemed nice enough at first. The husband worked long hours and kept to himself, but his wife was a different story entirely. From day one, she made it clear that she had vision for the neighborhood. It started with small comments when I was out walking my dogs. Her: "Oh, you're the one with that old fence." Me: "Yeah, it came with the house. Works great for keeping the dogs contained." Her: "It really doesn't match the aesthetic I'm going for with my landscaping project." I thought that was odd, considering it was my fence on my property, but I just smiled and kept walking. Things escalated quickly after that. She began leaving passive-aggressive notes in my mailbox about neighborhood harmony and property values. When I didn't respond to those, she started filing complaints with the homeowners association. The first complaint claimed my fence was improperly installed and leaning. The association sent someone to inspect it, and they found nothing wrong. The second complaint said it was the wrong color and violated association guidelines. Another inspection, another dismissal. The third complaint alleged it was too tall. You guessed it, completely baseless. After the fourth false complaint in 2 months, the association president called me directly. "Association president, look, we know your fence is fine. She's been calling us almost daily. Is there any way you two can work this out?" Me: "I've tried to be neighborly, but she wants me to tear down a perfectly good fence that's been there for years." Association president: "We'll keep documenting her complaints as unfounded, but this is getting ridiculous." That's when I decided to install security cameras. Something about her obsession with my fence felt unhinged, and I wanted to protect myself. Best decision I ever made. 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find her standing in my backyard with a measuring tape, taking photos of my fence from every angle. I watched the footage later. She'd hopped my fence to get into my yard. The next morning, she was back with a different approach. Her: "I've decided to hire a contractor to replace your fence with something more suitable. Don't worry, I'll pay for it." Me: "Absolutely not. This is my property, and I'm not removing my fence." Her: "But it ruins the entire view from my kitchen window. I have rights too." Me: "Your rights end at your property line." Her: "We'll see about that." I should have known that wasn't the end of it. 3 days later, I was at work when my phone started buzzing with motion alerts from my security system. I pulled up the camera feed and couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was a contractor with a sledgehammer, actively demolishing my fence. And there she was, standing on her porch, directing the whole operation like some kind of demolition foreman. I immediately called the police and raced home. By the time I arrived, they'd destroyed about 30 feet of fencing, and the contractor was loading the debris into a truck. The police were already there, talking to both the contractor and my neighbor. The contractor looked mortified when the cops explained the situation. Contractor: "Ma'am, you told me this was your fence, and you had permission to remove it." Her: "It should be my fence. It's ruining my property value." Police officer: "That's not how property ownership works." I showed the officers my security footage, property surveys, and all the documentation from the homeowners association complaints. It was crystal clear that she'd hired someone to destroy my property without permission. Her: "This is harassment. He installed that fence just to spite me." Me: "Officer, I have receipts showing this fence was installed 4 years before I even bought the house." The contractor apologized profusely and refused to accept payment from her for the work. He'd been completely deceived about the situation. She was arrested for criminal mischief and trespassing. But that wasn't enough for me. The damaged fence was going to cost over $3,000 to repair, and I'd missed a full day of work dealing with this mess. I decided to sue her for damages, trespassing, and the emotional distress of having my property destroyed. During the legal proceedings, more details came to light. Apparently, she'd been planning this for weeks. She'd gotten quotes from multiple contractors before finding one willing to do the work quickly. She'd even researched property laws to try to find a loophole that would force me to remove the fence. Her lawyer tried to argue that the fence was an attractive nuisance, and that she was justified in removing it for safety reasons. The judge wasn't buying it. "Judge, ma'am, you cannot hire contractors to demolish your neighbor's property because you don't like how it looks." Her: "But Your Honor, it's affecting my mental health and property enjoyment." Judge: "Then you should have discussed it with your neighbor or moved to a property without adjacent fencing." The court ruled in my favor completely. She had to pay for all damages, my legal fees, and additional punitive damages for the malicious nature of her actions. The total came to just over $8,000. Here's where the story gets really satisfying. With the settlement money, I decided to upgrade my fencing situation. Instead of just replacing the damaged section with the same 6-foot wooden fence, I hired a contractor to install a beautiful 8-foot cedar privacy fence with decorative iron accents along the entire property line. The new fence is absolutely gorgeous and completely within all association guidelines. It also happens to block even more of her view than the original fence did. The day the new fence was completed, I was outside admiring the work when she came storming over. Her: "You did this on purpose. This fence is even worse than the old one." Me: "Actually, I have you to thank for this upgrade. Your settlement payment covered the whole thing." Her: "I'm calling the homeowners association." Me: "Go ahead. They already approved the design." She did file another complaint, of course. The association dismissed it immediately and sent her a formal warning about frivolous complaints. Apparently, repeated false complaints can result in fines and even legal action from the homeowners association itself. 6 months later, I heard through neighborhood gossip that they were putting their house up for sale. Whether it was the legal fees, the embarrassment, or just the realization that they couldn't bully their neighbors into submission, they decided to move on. The best part? My new fence has increased my property value significantly. The real estate agent who gave me an updated assessment said the quality fencing and landscaping made my property one of the more desirable ones in the neighborhood. So there you have it. Thanks to one entitled neighbor's obsession with aesthetics, I ended up with a fence upgrade that I never would have splurged on otherwise. Sometimes justice really does prevail, and sometimes karma comes in the form of an 8-foot cedar privacy fence that's even more aesthetically displeasing to entitled neighbors than the original. Story 2. Let me give you some background first. I'm a single mom working 2 jobs to make ends meet. My daughter just turned 5 last week, and I'd been saving up for months to throw her a proper birthday party. Not anything fancy, mind you, but something special enough that she'd remember it. The problem was our tiny apartment barely fits the 2 of us, let alone a bunch of kids running around. That's when my coworker suggested the public park. It has picnic tables, a playground, and best of all, it's free. I spent weeks planning everything. I made homemade decorations, bought party favors from the dollar store, and even splurged on a custom cake from the local bakery. It had my daughter's favorite cartoon character on it and cost me nearly $200, which was a huge stretch for our budget. The day of the party arrived, and everything was going perfectly. About 15 kids showed up with their parents, and my daughter was having the time of her life. I'd set up everything on 2 picnic tables, with the cake as the centerpiece on one table, while we played games at the other end of the park. That's when she appeared. This woman, probably in her 40s, just walked up to our table like she owned the place. She had that look, you know? The kind that screams, "I deserve everything I want." Before I could even process what was happening, she picked up the entire cake and started walking away with it. I ran after her, completely confused. Me, excuse me, that's my daughter's birthday cake. Karen, oh, I thought it was abandoned. No one was watching it. Me, abandoned. We're literally having a party right here. You can see all the decorations and the kids playing. Karen, well, I didn't see anyone near it, so I assumed it was free for the taking. My son's birthday is next week, and this will save me a trip to the store. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Save her a trip to the store. This cake had my daughter's name written on it in bright purple frosting. Me, look, you can clearly see this cake has my daughter's name on it. This is her birthday party. Please give it back. That's when things got really weird. Her whole demeanor changed, and she started getting louder. Karen, I already touched it, so I can't give it back now. That would be unsanitary. Me, you picked up the whole box. The cake is still perfectly fine. Karen, are you calling me dirty? How dare you? Other parents started gathering around because she was making such a scene. My daughter and the other kids stopped playing and came over to see what was happening. I could see my little girl's face starting to scrunch up like she was about to cry when she saw this stranger holding her birthday cake. Me, please, just look at the cake. It literally has my daughter's name on it. Just give it back, and we can pretend this never happened. That's when she really lost it. Karen suddenly burst into fake tears, the kind that would make a soap opera actress jealous. Karen, this woman is harassing me. She's being so aggressive and mean. I'm scared for my safety. She started crying louder and looking around for sympathy from the other parents. A few people looked uncomfortable, but most of them had been watching the whole thing and knew exactly what was going on. Me, I'm not harassing anyone. I'm just asking for my daughter's birthday cake back. Karen, she's threatening me. Someone call the police. At this point, my daughter started crying for real because some crazy lady was screaming while holding her birthday cake hostage. The other kids were getting scared too, and parents were trying to comfort them. That's when one of the dads stepped forward. Dad, ma'am, I've been recording this whole thing on my phone for a live stream of the party. Would you like me to play back what actually happened? Karen's face went completely white. Karen, you can't record me without my permission. Dad, actually, we're in a public park, and I was filming the party. You walked into my shot and started this whole situation. He pulled out his phone and showed the screen to everyone gathered around. Sure enough, the whole thing was right there. You could see her walking up to our table, taking the cake without asking anyone, and then starting the argument when I confronted her. Me, look, this has gone way too far. Just give me the cake back and leave. But Karen wasn't done. She clutched the cake box tighter to her chest and started screaming even louder. Karen, I'm being attacked. This is assault. Someone help me. That's when another parent actually did call the police, but not for the reason Karen wanted. The dad with the phone explained the situation to the operator while Karen continued her performance. When the cops showed up about 10 minutes later, Karen immediately ran to them with her fake tears still flowing. Karen, officers, thank God you're here. This woman has been harassing and threatening me. I want to press charges. The first officer, a woman who looked like she'd seen this type of situation before, listened patiently to Karen's story. Then she turned to me. Officer, and what's your side of this? I explained everything calmly while my daughter clung to my leg, still sniffling. Then the dad with the phone stepped forward. Dad, officer, I have the whole incident recorded if you'd like to see it. The officer watched the video on his phone, and I could see her expression change from neutral to annoyed. She walked back over to Karen. Officer, ma'am, I need you to return that cake to its rightful owner immediately. Karen, but I thought it was abandoned. Officer, the video clearly shows you taking a cake from a decorated birthday party setup, and the cake has the child's name on it. You also made false statements about being threatened when the video shows you were the one escalating the situation. Karen finally realized she wasn't going to win this one. She reluctantly handed over the cake, but not without one last attempt at drama. Karen, This is discrimination. You're only taking her side because she has a child. The officer had clearly reached her limit. Officer: Ma'am, you're under arrest for theft and creating a public disturbance. Karen's mouth fell open as the handcuffs came out. Karen, you can't arrest me. I didn't do anything wrong. Officer: You stole someone's property and then made false accusations while disturbing the peace in a public park. You absolutely can be arrested for that. As they led Karen away, she was still protesting her innocence and threatening to sue everyone in sight. The kids, who had been watching this whole drama unfold, suddenly broke into applause like they just watched a movie with a satisfying ending. The rest of the party went off without a hitch. My daughter got her cake, and it tasted even sweeter knowing justice had been served alongside it. The dad who recorded everything sent me the video, and I later found out that Karen was charged with petty theft and disorderly conduct. She had to pay a fine and do community service. The best part: several parents exchanged numbers with me that day, and my daughter made some great friends. Sometimes good things really do come from the worst situations. Story 3. I've been dealing with chronic fatigue syndrome for about 3 years now. It's one of those invisible disabilities that people don't really understand unless they live with it. Some days I'm fine, other days I can barely get out of bed. Standing for long periods or walking long distances can trigger flare-ups that leave me completely drained for days. My doctor had finally convinced me to apply for disability accommodations when flying. The paperwork was a nightmare, but after months of back and forth with my insurance and the airline, I got approved for early boarding and priority seating. It was a huge relief because airports are basically torture chambers for someone with my condition. All that walking, standing in lines, and dealing with crowds. So there I was last month, heading to my sister's wedding across the country. I'd splurged on a first-class seat because I knew I'd need the extra space and comfort for the 5-hour flight. My sister had insisted on helping pay for the upgrade as an early birthday gift. I got to the gate early and waited for the pre-boarding announcement. When they called for passengers needing extra assistance, I grabbed my carry-on and headed to the gate agent. She scanned my boarding pass and smiled. "Gate agent, have a great flight, and thank you for flying with us." I made my way down the jet bridge, grateful that I wouldn't have to stand in a long line or fight for overhead bin space. The flight attendant at the door was really nice too. "Flight attendant, welcome aboard. Your seat is 2A, just right up there on the left." I found my seat and settled in, already feeling less anxious about the flight. I pulled out my book and was just getting comfortable when this woman in her 50s walked up. She was dressed head to toe in designer clothes and had this look on her face like she smelled something bad. "Karen, excuse me, but I think you're in the wrong section." Me: "No, this is my seat. 2A. "Karen, that's impossible. You boarded with the disabled passengers. Real disabled people don't sit in first class. They sit in the back where there's more room for their wheelchairs." I felt my face get hot. This was exactly the kind of confrontation I'd been dreading. Me: "I have a disability accommodation for early boarding. This is my assigned seat." "Karen, what disability? You look perfectly fine to me. You walked on here just like everyone else. I saw you carry your own bag." The flight attendant who had greeted me earlier came over, probably sensing the tension. "Flight attendant, is everything okay here?" "Karen, this person is clearly lying about being disabled to get special treatment. I've been flying first class for 20 years, and I've never seen a disabled person up here. They belong in the back with the other wheelchair people." Flight attendant: "Ma'am, I need you to return to your seat. This passenger has the proper documentation for their accommodation." Karen: "Documentation? Anyone can fake paperwork these days. Look at them. They're young and healthy. Meanwhile, my husband and I paid full price for our seats, while this faker gets to board early and probably got some kind of discount too." More passengers were boarding now, and people were starting to stare. I felt like I wanted to disappear into my seat. Me: "I have chronic fatigue syndrome. It's an invisible disability. I have all the proper medical clearance. Karen, chronic fatigue. You mean being lazy? That's not a real disability. Real disabled people use wheelchairs or have missing limbs. You're just scamming the system. She turned to the flight attendant again. Karen, I demand you move this person to economy where they belong, or move me and my husband to better seats to make up for this fraud. The flight attendant looked like she'd had enough. Flight attendant, ma'am, I'm going to need you to lower your voice and return to your seat, or I'll have to call security. Karen, good, call security. They can verify that this person is lying about being disabled. And while you're at it, call your supervisor. I want to speak to whoever's in charge of this joke of an airline. The flight attendant walked away, and I thought maybe that was the end of it. But Karen just stood there, glaring at me. Karen, you should be ashamed of yourself. People like you are the reason why people with real disabilities can't get the help they need. Her husband finally spoke up from his seat across the aisle. Karen's husband, honey, maybe we should just drop this. Karen, no, I'm not letting this slide. This is fraud, plain and simple. A few minutes later, the flight attendant came back with 2 airport security officers and a supervisor. Supervisor, I understand there's been some confusion about passenger accommodations. Karen, finally, someone with authority. This person is pretending to be disabled to get special treatment. I want them removed from first class immediately. Security officer, sir, do you have your medical documentation with you? I pulled out my phone and showed him the digital copies of my accommodation letter and medical clearance. He looked them over carefully. Security officer, these look legitimate. Ma'am, this passenger has proper authorization for their accommodation. Karen, those could be faked. Anyone with a computer could make those. I demand you verify them with whoever issued them. Supervisor, we can certainly do that. Officer Johnson, can you radio the main security office and have them verify these documents with the medical clearance database? I was mortified. Now they were treating me like I was actually suspicious, but I handed over my ID and waited while they made their calls. Karen, see? I told you something was fishy. Real disabled people don't look like that. After about 10 minutes, the security officer came back. Security officer, the documentation checks out completely. This passenger is authorized for disability accommodations, including early boarding and priority seating. Karen, that's impossible. The system must be wrong. Supervisor, ma'am, I need to ask you to return to your seat now. This passenger has done nothing wrong. Karen, I'm not sitting down until this fraud is removed from first class. This is discrimination against paying customers. Security officer, ma'am, if you don't return to your seat immediately, we'll have to remove you from the aircraft. Karen, you can't remove me. I paid for this ticket. This is America. I have rights. The entire first-class cabin was watching now. Karen's husband looked like he wanted to crawl under his seat. Supervisor, sir, you'll need to gather your belongings. Both of you are being removed from this flight. Karen, this is outrageous. I'm never flying this garbage airline again. I'm calling my lawyer. This is discrimination. Security officer, ma'am, you're also being flagged in our system for harassment of a disabled passenger. You'll need to speak with our customer service department before you can book any future flights with this airline. Karen, harassment. I was protecting the integrity of your disability program. This person is obviously lying. They escorted Karen and her mortified husband off the plane while she continued shouting about lawyers and discrimination. The whole cabin erupted in quiet conversations and head shaking. The flight attendant came over to check on me. Flight attendant, I am so sorry you had to deal with that. Can I get you anything? A drink? Extra snacks? Me, I'm okay, thank you. Just glad it's over. Flight attendant, for what it's worth, we see this more than we should. People think they know what disability looks like, but invisible disabilities are just as real and just as challenging. About an hour into the flight, the captain made an announcement. Captain, Folks, I want to apologize for the delay in our departure. We had to remove some disruptive passengers, but we're now cruising at altitude and should arrive on time. A passenger a few rows back actually started clapping, and a few others joined in. I spent the rest of the flight reading my book in peace, and the flight attendants made sure I had everything I needed. When we landed, the supervisor was waiting at the gate with an apology letter and a voucher for a future flight. He told me that Karen had been banned from the airline pending a review of her behavior, and that they took harassment of passengers with disabilities very seriously. I made it to my sister's wedding feeling better than I had in months. Sometimes the system actually works the way it's supposed to, and entitled people get exactly what they deserve. Story 4. I've been a single parent for 5 years now, ever since my divorce. My daughter has always been my pride and joy. She's brilliant, hardworking, and has this incredible curiosity about the world that amazes me every day. When she was in elementary school, she'd spend hours in our garage conducting little experiments with baking soda volcanoes and growing crystals. I knew science was her passion. This year, as an 8th grader, she decided to enter the regional science fair with a project about water purification methods in developing countries. She'd been working on it for months, staying up late researching, testing different filtration materials, and documenting everything meticulously. I was so proud watching her dedication. She even reached out to a local environmental engineer who agreed to mentor her via email. The project was entirely her own work, and she could explain every aspect of it in detail. The day of the science fair arrived, and my daughter was buzzing with excitement. Her display looked professional, with detailed charts, photos of her experiments, and a working prototype of her water filter. We arrived early to set up, and I could see other parents and students admiring her work as they walked by. That's when I first encountered Karen. She stormed over to our booth with her son trailing behind her, looking embarrassed. Karen was one of those parents I'd seen at school events before, always loud, always complaining about something, always convinced her child was being treated unfairly. Karen, your daughter needs to withdraw her project immediately. Me, excuse me? Why would she do that? Karen, my son has been working just as hard, and he deserves a chance to win for once. Your daughter always gets the good grades and the teacher's attention. It's not fair to the other kids. My daughter looked up from adjusting her display, confused. My daughter, I'm sorry, but I don't understand. Everyone gets to compete fairly. Karen, don't play innocent with me. I know you didn't do this work yourself. There's no way a 13-year-old could produce something this advanced without significant adult help. I felt my blood pressure rising, but I tried to stay calm. Me? I can assure you that this is entirely my daughter's work. I helped with transportation to gather materials, but every bit of research, experimentation, and analysis was done by her. Karen, that's what they all say. Look, I'm trying to be reasonable here. If you withdraw now, we can avoid any unpleasantness. My son really needs this win. He's been struggling in school, and this would boost his confidence. My daughter stepped forward, her voice steady despite the situation. My daughter, I worked really hard on this project. I can answer any questions about my methodology or findings. I'm not withdrawing. Karen's face turned red. Karen, fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. I'm going to report this plagiarism to the judges. When they investigate and find out the truth, your daughter will be disqualified and possibly suspended from school. With that threat, she marched off with her son, who kept glancing back apologetically. My daughter looked shaken, but I squeezed her shoulder. Me? Don't worry, sweetheart. You know your project inside and out. The truth will come out. About an hour later, one of the judges approached our booth. He was a chemistry professor from the local university. Judge, I understand there's been a concern raised about the authenticity of your project. Would you mind walking me through your process? My daughter straightened up and launched into a detailed explanation of her research, her hypothesis, her experimental design, and her results. She answered every question the judge threw at her with confidence and precision. She showed him her lab notebook with dated entries, explained her statistical analysis, and even discussed the limitations of her study and ideas for future research. The judge nodded approvingly. Judge, impressive work. Very thorough documentation. Can you tell me about this email correspondence with the environmental engineer? My daughter pulled up the email chain on her tablet, showing months of back-and-forth questions and guidance. The judge could see that she was asking intelligent questions and clearly understood the responses. Judge, thank you. This is clearly your own work. Very well done. As he walked away, I noticed him heading directly toward Karen's son's booth. Karen was hovering nearby, probably hoping to hear about my daughter's disqualification. The judging continued, and my daughter answered questions from visitors and other judges with enthusiasm. Meanwhile, I noticed some commotion at Karen's son's display. Multiple judges were gathered there, and Karen was getting increasingly agitated. About 30 minutes later, the same chemistry professor returned to our booth with 2 other judges. Judge, we need to ask you a few more questions. But first, I want you to know that the plagiarism allegation against you has been thoroughly investigated and dismissed. Your work is clearly original and well documented. Second judge, in fact, we're impressed by the quality of your documentation. It actually helped us identify a real case of plagiarism in another project. I saw Karen across the room, her face pale as she argued with a different judge near her son's booth. Judge, the student who accused you of plagiarism has been disqualified. We found that significant portions of his project were copied directly from online sources, including a university research paper from 2019. When we questioned him about his methodology, he couldn't explain his own supposed work. My daughter looked shocked. My daughter, that's terrible. I feel bad for him. Third judge, don't feel bad. Actions have consequences. What you should feel is proud. Your project is outstanding, and your documentation is a model for scientific integrity. The announcement came an hour later. My daughter won first place in the environmental science category and qualified for the state competition. As we celebrated, I watched Karen being escorted to the school office by the principal. Later that week, I received a call from the school's vice principal. Vice principal, I wanted to update you on the situation from the science fair. The mother who made the false plagiarism accusation has been banned from all school events for 2 years. We take false accusations very seriously, especially when they're clearly motivated by a desire to sabotage other students. Me, what about her son? Vice principal, he'll have the opportunity to redo the assignment with appropriate oversight. But he's been disqualified from this year's competition. We're also requiring him to complete a workshop on academic integrity. The best part came a month later at the state science fair. My daughter placed 3rd overall and received a scholarship offer from the state university. As we loaded her trophy and certificate into the car, she looked at me with a smile. My daughter, I'm glad I didn't give up. Me, I'm proud of you for standing your ground. You earned this through hard work and integrity. Karen never did apologize, but her son approached my daughter at school a few weeks later and quietly congratulated her on her state placement. Sometimes the apple does fall far from the tree. The whole experience taught me that bullies come in all ages, but the truth has a way of coming out when you have the receipts to back it up. My daughter's meticulous documentation didn't just win her the competition, it protected her from someone else's attempt to tear her down.